Hello futurists! Welcome to my YouTube channel where I track the acceleration of intelligence that will inevitably help us build a brain. In today's video, we'll be looking at artificially intelligent autonomous drone warfare. For as long as history has been recorded, security has been the minimum objective of an organized society. Cultures have differed in their values, and political units have differed in their interests and aspirations. But no society that could not defend itself, either alone or in alignment with other societies, has endured. In a room packed full of US Air Force personnel, Elon Musk issued a bold pronouncement. The fighter jet era has passed. Locally autonomous drone warfare is where it's at, where the future will be.
Definitely going to go into kind of autonomous, locally autonomous drone warfare is where it's at, where the future will be. I'm just saying, it's not I want the future to be this. It's just this is what the future will be. Okay, is autonomous drone warfare, and at a local level, I can't believe I'm saying this because this is like dangerous, but it's simply what will occur is sort of drones locally being autonomous but I think we still want to retain sort of the authority to damage or destroy anything that isn't an autonomous drone. We'll keep that authority back here with a person in the loop. Okay. But it's the fighter jet era has passed. That is, it's just, yeah, fighter jet era has passed.
In this video, we'll be discussing the use of autonomous military drones controlled by AI. This video is broken up into 4 chapters. Chapter 1, the current state of autonomous military drones. Chapter 2, what are the legal perspectives? Chapter 3, how much human touch is required? Chapter 4, where do we go from here? Chapter 1, the current status of autonomous military drones. Fighter aviation is one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. Only a small percentage of people are able to complete years of training and graduate to a fighter squadron that is operational. Even then, being competent in a fighter cockpit takes years of additional experience. The quest does not end there, as experienced fighter pilots must train on a near daily basis to keep their skills up to date. The reason for this is straightforward. Qualified fighter pilots must be able to master highly aggressive 3-dimensional maneuvering at speeds exceeding twice the speed of sound in a highly dynamic battle space, operate highly sophisticated mission equipment, and face adversaries who will stop at nothing to kill them. Success entails starting over the next day. Failure is usually followed by death or capture. The question still remains: can AI-driven autonomous drones take over for these highly skilled pilots? The possibility of life or death decisions someday being taken by machines not under the direct control of humans needs to be taken seriously. Over the last few years, we have seen a rapid development in the field of drone technology, with an ever-increasing degree of autonomy. While no approved AI autonomous drone systems are operational, as far as we know, the technology is being tested and developed. Some see the new opportunities and potential benefits of using AI autonomous drones. Others consider the development and use of such technology as inherently immoral. Influential people like Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, and Steve Wozniak have already urged a ban on warfare using autonomous weapons with artificial intelligence. Most people would probably understand the concept of autonomous drones as something sophisticated. For instance, drones can act based on their own choice of options, what is commonly defined as system initiative, and full autonomy in military terminology. Such drones are programmed with a large number of alternative responses to the different challenges they may meet in performing their mission. This is not science fiction. The technology is largely developed, though to date, no approved AI autonomous drone systems are yet operational. The limiting factor is not the technology, but rather the political will to develop or admit to having such politically sensitive technology, which would allow lethal machines to operate without being under the direct control of humans. One of the greatest challenges for the development and approval of aircraft with such technology is that it is extremely difficult to develop satisfactory validation systems, which would ensure that the technology is safe and acts like humans would. In practice, such sophisticated drones would involve programming for an incredible number of combinations of alternative courses of action, making it impossible to verify and test them to the level used for manned aircraft. There are also those who think of autonomous, meaning artificial intelligence, systems that learn and even self-develop possible courses of action to new challenges. Currently, it doesn't seem like we are close to a breakthrough on such technology, but many fear that we actually might be. After the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991, more than 45 years of intense fighter jet development came to a halt. Several key technologies, such as jet engines, radar-guided missiles, heads-up displays, and stealth, were rapidly introduced during the Cold War, as well as the development of the first 4 generations of post-war fighter aircraft. The F-22 Raptor, the first 5th generation fighter, was released in the United States in the early 2000s. The 6th generation fighter is said to have advanced drones programmed with algorithms for countless human-defined courses of action to meet emerging challenges, and are already being tested by a number of civilian universities and military research institutions. Several countries have announced the development of a 6th generation aircraft program, including the United States, Russia, and China. The 6th generation fighters are expected to enter service in the 2030s. Testing of autonomous drones that operate with manned aircraft, all from what the US Air Force calls unmanned loyal wingman aircraft, to the already well-tested Broad Area Maritime Surveillance BAMS system of Poseidon P-8 maritime patrol aircraft and unmanned Triton aircraft. In fact, Boeing has already rolled out the first loyal wingman drone for the Royal Australian Air Force, putting the RAAF high on the list of countries experimenting with autonomous aircraft. There will be further development of unmanned systems to be dispatched from manned aircraft, to work independently or an extension of the mother aircraft. For example, the recently tested Perdix nano drones, of which 100 drones were dropped from a F-18 mother aircraft. Such drones would necessarily operate with a high degree of autonomy. The prospects of autonomous AI technology, be it flying drones, underwater vehicles, or other lethal weapons systems, clearly bring new opportunities for military forces. In the case of flying aircraft, there are long lead times in educating pilots and operators. One of the greatest challenges that will come from the development of autonomous AI drones is that military forces in the near future could develop great fighting power in much shorter timeframes than previously. It is important to note, and many have, that creating the infrastructure and educating ground crew for operating drones is no cheaper or easier than educating aircrew. However, once in place, the drone crew and operation centers would be able to operate large numbers of drones. Similarly, legacy manned aircraft would be at the center of a local combat or intelligence system, extended with drones serving, for example, in supportive roles for jamming, as weapons delivery platforms, or as a system of multi-sensor platforms. Moving beyond the past limitations of one pilot flying one aircraft or one crew flying one drone to a situation where one crew could control large amounts of drones would quite simply be groundbreaking. These perspectives for new types of high-tech weapon systems and the fears they raise are the background for the research conducted on autonomous AI drones and weapon systems. It is almost impossible to assess when these technologies will become widespread. This will depend on the situation. However, the technologies are becoming available and are maturing, although the difficult discussions on legal and ethical challenges should be dealt with sooner rather than later. Chapter 2. What are the legal perspectives? General laws apply, but it's not specific. Autonomous drones, if and when they are used during armed conflict, would be subject to the general principles and rules of the law of armed conflict. In this respect, AI autonomous drones are not to be distinguished from any other weapons, weapon systems, or weapon platforms. As with any means of warfare, autonomous drones must only be directed at lawful targets, military objectives, and combatants, and attacks must not be expected to cause excessive collateral damage. The X-47B Unmanned Combat Air Vehicle, UCAS, developed by Northrop Grumman in cooperation with DARPA, is popularly referred to semi-autonomous. Some particular features of AI autonomous drones may, however, challenge the application of the law of armed conflict. Autonomous drones, regardless of how one ultimately chooses to define them, would be able to operate on their own to a certain degree in time and space. This potential absence of human interference with the weapon or weapon system during attacks raises the question of when and where the law requires human presence in the decision cycle. The law requires a reasonable commander acting in good faith. Several of the legal obligations applicable during armed conflict are made to fit the fog of war. Some of these legal rules contain flexible expressions, leaving military commanders with some leeway for discretion when interpreting and deciding. For example, what amounts to a military advantage and how important this advantage is for the attack as a whole. Furthermore, they have to weigh up the relative importance of this advantage compared to the collateral damage anticipated, called the principle of proportionality. This leeway for discretion is matched with an expectation that the military commander is acting in good faith and assessing the military advantage, as well as the collateral damage, based on the information reasonably available to him or her at the time. During attack decisions, military commanders engaged in the planning or execution of the attack must take all feasible precautions to verify that the attack is not directed at a protected person or protected object, and that the attack is not expected to violate the principle of proportionality. Chapter 3. How much human touch is required? Currently, AI-augmented autonomous drones are not capable of reasoning in the human sense. They do not possess human consciousness. So far, autonomous drones, or any autonomous system, cannot replace human beings within the law. The requirements set out appear to presume human in the loop of the decision cycle. At some point during attack decisions, a human being must decide upon what to attack and how important the target is. The key question revolves around how wide a decision cycle is. Obviously, human operators can be assisted by AI-driven autonomous machines limited in time and space. But where are the limitations required? As with any legal question concerning warfare, the answer is bound to be circumstantial. If the environment is densely populated, such as urban areas, the limitations must necessarily be tighter than in less populated areas, such as on the high seas or underwater. Here, the devil is buried in the details. In some circumstances, an autonomous weapons system may lawfully be left alone to operate for hours or days, while in other circumstances all autonomy ought to be shut off to rely on human judgment or error. Compliance with the law is central to any military and political policy making, including the development and use of autonomous AI drones. Although law and ethics often overlap, there may be important ethical issues at stake, particularly in the case of emerging military technologies not properly addressed by current law. Ethical reflection may complement the law by providing normative guidance in these grey areas. It may also be important in emphasizing when ethical obligations should exceed legal duties in the interests of good political governance. The delegation of life and death decisions to non-human agents is a recurring concern of those who oppose autonomous AI weapons systems. A primary concern is that allowing a machine to decide to kill a human being undermines the value of human life. From this perspective, human life is of such significant value that it is inappropriate for a machine ever to decide to end a life. In other words, there is something inherently immoral about developing and using autonomous drones. It may be difficult to argue that AI-driven autonomous drones can possibly satisfy the jus in bello criterion of discrimination in the just war tradition. To make moral judgments about who may legitimately be targeted in the fog of war is difficult, even for human soldiers. The fear is that allowing autonomous drones to make such distinctions would most likely result in civilian casualties and unacceptable collateral damage. Even if such weapon systems would be able to discriminate between combatants and non-combatants, it is still a question whether an artificially intelligent autonomous drone would be able to assess whether an attack is proportionate or not, that is, whether the attack would cause unnecessary suffering. However, beyond the uncertainty of what technological capabilities autonomous artificial intelligent drones will possess in the future to make such distinctions, one can also argue that if these weapon systems are unable to operate within the requirements of jus in bello, it is unlikely that they will be deployed, at least in operational environments where the risk of causing excessive harm on civilians is high. On the other hand, it could also be argued that using autonomous drones is not just acceptable from a moral perspective, but even morally preferable to human soldiers. AI-enabled autonomous drones would be able to process more incoming sensory information than human soldiers and could therefore make more well-informed decisions. And since the judgments of machines would not be clouded by emotions such as fear and rage, it could possibly reduce the risk of war crimes that may otherwise have been committed by human soldiers. Using super-intelligent autonomous drones may also improve certain aspects of humanitarian missions, benefiting the civilians who are being assisted and reducing risks to soldiers. Using AI autonomous systems to search dangerous areas or perform high-risk tasks, such as bomb disposal or clearing a house, would eliminate the risk of human soldiers being injured or killed. Then again, such developments may have implications for the jus ad bellum criteria of the just war tradition. Limiting the risk to soldiers by removing them from the battlefield altogether could make war too easy, reducing it to a low-cost technological enterprise that no longer requires any public or moral commitment. This might just change the definition of warfare. Chapter 4. Where do we go from here? It is difficult to predict the future, but the technological potential of autonomous drones is already being tested and developed. To what extent they will become important military technologies will depend on what the needs of nations will be, which in turn will be determined by the future security situation. It would be better to develop a legal and ethical framework before such a situation occurs. Clearly, AI autonomous drones raise important judicial and ethical issues about responsibility for unintentional harm. The technologies create some moral accountability gaps. When artificially intelligent autonomous military systems are deployed, it becomes less clear how to distribute the responsibility. And such potential responsibility gaps must be addressed properly through technical solutions and legal regulations. At the same time, technological evolution will continue, and an artificially intelligent autonomous drone, no matter how technologically sophisticated it is designed, remains a product, a tool in the hands of humans. Our fundamental responsibility for war and how wars are fought can never be morally outsourced. We will collectively have to decide if machines are ready. This wraps up today's video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, and if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Make today a great day. Until next time, keep thinking.